The brain is an interesting instrument, interesting mechanism. There are 500 trillion synapses in our brains. And when you see a flower, it's not just a flower. You see a flower to you is about 2 billion synapses. Its shape, its color, its smell, but then those synapses connect to other synapses. And it becomes a little bit more than 2 billion, no, a lot more. A flower can be your favorite or your least favorite. It can remind you of an ex. It can remind you of a beautiful painting that you saw once, or perhaps one that you want to create one day. It can dash your hopes and make you feel pain. Perhaps maybe you were riding a bike one time and you ran into a flower bed and really ripped it up. Just being a flower before it becomes all these other things, before it starts getting tied into emotions and memories, 2 billion synapses. And those emotions and memories get tied in more, but 2 billion synapses. The human brain is a remarkable mechanism. What's interesting to me is that this mechanism, it develops, pathways are formed in response to external stimuli. But everything that the brain is happening in the brain. Everything, all the pathways that are formed, it doesn't take something that's an external element or a nutrient, something like, well, you have to eat. But it is forming in response to what your senses interact with. But all the process of your brain forming, learning, becoming, and thinking, but that ties into consciousness, and I'll get there in a minute. But all of that is just the brain operating on the other side of the barrier that is the senses, that are the senses. And in these 500 trillion synapses, and less, synapses connected to neurons. But in these 500 trillion, our consciousness is floating. Scientists and even neurologists, most of them, I think, will say that the electricity that is firing is you. And that could be true. That could be consciousness. But I think consciousness is more amorphous, more ethereal. It feels, what consciousness feels like is floating around inside this mechanism. And while I'm not an expert on the subject, I will say that because I have schizophrenia, I take in a remarkable amount of sensory data, and my brain operates very quickly. If I don't take medication, it operates too quickly, and there's too much sensory data to where the human brain is not meant to operate with all that information as quickly as it comes in. I literally cannot even sleep naturally. I've tried every natural way. Got to take psychiatric meds for it, specifically for, schizophrenia. But there's things that I have noticed and still do notice that other people don't. And this is also tied into spirituality and kind of feeling who you are, and meditation connecting to your brain, but also spiritual practices and understanding, reading books that expand your feeling of yourself, that teach you how to operate your body, because we don't come into this world and read a user's manual. We're told a whole lot of things that are about the external world, but not how to use our bodies very well, not how to breathe well, not how to calm our minds, not how to just use the mechanism. We're taught there are 2 barriers between us and what we are taught. Us being, the mechanism, the consciousness floating around in the mechanism, this area. The 2 barriers, though, are we're not taught about thinking, how to think, and then we're taught to interpret things rather than to experience things. We're interpreting words. We're taught how to interpret and what interpretations are. There's 2 barriers. Thinking, and not necessarily the experience itself, but interpretation through language, which is that part's fairly unavoidable, but we're not taught about experience itself or thinking. These are two different things. We're not taught about those things, and we're taught about interpretation, which is on the other side. Regardless, back to my point about the senses. Lights are always a little bit too bright. My eyes are actually very bad. My eyesight is very bad. My eyesight is not good, but the amount of data, the light data that goes into my eyes, I take in more than I should. It's strange to think about how light data is different from your vision, the extent and the health of your vision itself. Light data is different. So when I look around, I see, it's effectively like seeing, but it's going to sound very strange. And I feel like most people would be able to notice this if they looked close enough, if they see seeing and don't look at things on the other side of seeing. If you look at seeing, strange thing, I know. I feel like most people could see this if you pay attention close enough. But the way that I see, and it's effectively like seeing, I see every single light pinprick hit my eye. I don't know if it's because my brain operates more quickly or if it's because I take in more sensory data. But it's 1/200th of a second. It's so quick, 1/500th, something like that. But I see them. I see them enough to where all of my vision looks like static, but there's millions and millions of them. So I effectively see. Like I see very well, actually. Well, with contacts, but I see the light. And it sounds like it would be like blinding, and it'd be like all these little pinpricks, but no, because it's so quick and there's millions and millions and millions of them that I'm seeing all at once, I see. I feel like most people can see this if they look at seeing, but nobody that I've talked to has sees this way, so don't. Another one of my senses that is kind of turned up, if most people's senses are at, let's say, for the eyesight, I'm not even sure. It's hard to rate, but sense of smell. If most people's sense of smell is a 1, I'm at a 1.25. I've met other schizophrenics that are like 1.5 or a little bit higher, but I smell like I'm taking in more data, which is different than, I guess it is smelling well, but there's a slight difference. Same with eyesight. More data. Most of the data you don't even notice because your brain's just filtering it out. Your brain operates correctly, so your brain is just putting everything together and it's doing it correctly. When it's not, and you're taking in a whole bunch of data, my brain is not sifting through the data as effectively as your brain if you don't have some sort of mental disease. It's genetic. And schizophrenia, as far as I know, always comes from the male side. Interestingly enough, because that's where we get our nervous system, as far as I know. But I'm going into the medical side where I don't know as much. I just know some things. Going back to the sense of smell. Sometimes I smell my bowel movements inside my body. And I can smell further. There's a reason why this is called the shaman's disease. I'm not sure what it says about shamans. Definitely is a disease because it's inconvenient to smell so well, because if somebody smells bad, it is very apparent to me. I can't sift it out. I can smell when somebody is genetically compatible with me and from them walking past me but being many feet away. I smell, and there's this little, it's kind of a good smell, but there's this little burning sensation behind the smell, and I know that that person's pheromones, women obviously, is a good genetic match. There's very few that I'm a bad genetic match with. So like it just becomes like a cloud, some more than others. But, I mean, I have so many different kinds of, I mean, I'm not just white. I have African, I have Native American, mostly white, but I seem to be able to mix well. I mean, all humans can mix, but I can smell the genetic compatibility. And that doesn't mean that if somebody's genetically incompatible, that we couldn't have children. It's just that there's some women that smell like very genetically compatible with them, and they're not always the most attractive. I'm not going with a bias, at least not to my knowledge. But it's interesting because our brain usually there's so much pheromones in the air, our brain usually filters that out. Our sense of smell. It's something that we both learn kind of, but also our senses kind of, when they operate correctly, we don't necessarily notice, though we still have the capability to smell that well. My nervous system's a little different, so I'm taking in more smell data. I'm sure that's a technical term. Now, I can't hear, once again, I can't even hear, my eyesight isn't very good, so it's very interesting about the data versus acuity. My hearing is not very good, but when I listen, I do notice subtler sounds, because there's data, and luckily the listening thing and me blowing out my ears with loud music throughout my life, maybe that kind of saves me a little bit. But subtler sounds I can pick up. I can sense air movement. I can sense movements in a room as far as air goes, or in another room, a little bit on my skin, a little bit more than most people. I usually don't talk about this with most people because it sounds like I'm crazy. And since I have schizophrenia, it's a good argument to be made. But there is so much sensory data. Now, the human brain, you can, if you want all of this data, if you want to start noticing this stuff, your brain, your nervous system, and your body will adapt to what you want to focus on. That is how amazing the brain is. Your brain focuses on what you choose for it to focus on. And you can actually increase the amount of data you notice through your senses. I don't know if you want to, and it doesn't happen immediately. It's not some superpower. It doesn't make me really better at anything. In fact, it's pretty inconvenient. I can't control it as well because my instruments, my mechanism, that is my brain and my nervous system, it's harder for me to turn it down to more normal range, but you can notice more things. You can notice how you think. You choose your pathways. Human beings, we get a sense of philosophical and, of course, theological, but philosophical and mental vertigo when we don't have a horizon or an up and a down, or a beginning and an end. We don't do well with infinite spaces. That's why, being exposed to space, it can be pretty maddening if you don't know what to expect, and you're also in kind of a suit, so you kind of feel like you're in a comfy sweater. But if we didn't need a suit and we could just like look around, and there's no up and down, but we're comfortable with having something to relate to, so we know where up and down is. It's true with ideology too. It's true with thinking. It's true with even sensory data. It is true with, of course, interpretation, but that has to do with thinking. And that has to do with ideology and philosophy. But it's true with experience. We like to say this is a bad experience, this is a good experience. But these pathways that we form within our minds, within our brains, we make ourselves a box that we think inside. And those pathways become very familiar, also become the box that limits us. But we're the ones limiting ourselves as far as how we think, what we choose to experience, becoming more intelligent in in our relationship to experiences on a personal level. We make the box ourselves. I don't want to say every, but most people that have been brainwashed in some way by ideology, by religion, by politics, it's a comfy box. But everybody chooses to accept that thinking pattern. But because you think it's right, because you have an up and a down now, and other people around you are saying it's up or down, or it's comfy for any kind of number of reasons. It could even be in relation to trauma, but it's comfy for all kinds of different reasons. We choose to be inside that box. But that is a box we can escape. This has been a bit of a rant about the brain. And yeah, I think I'll just call this video that. My rant about the brain. How does that sound? At any rate, thank you very much for watching. If you want me to talk more about this, or if you want me to talk about anything related to what I was talking about, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. Like this video, hit that thumbs up down there. It really helps out the channel. Feel free to share this wherever you like. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I hope all of you have a wonderful day.